The Fairmont Hotel's grand ballroom was exactly as I'd expected it would be for Jefferson High's 10-year reunion. Overpriced decorations in our old school colors, a DJ playing hits from 2014, and round tables full of people desperately trying to prove how successful they'd become since graduation. I nursed a club soda at the back corner table, watching my former classmates network and one-up each other with stories about promotions, home purchases and exotic vacations. Most of them looked exactly like I'd expected, a little older, a little thicker around the middle, but fundamentally the same people they'd been at 18. Jordan Peterson. The voice belonged to Madison Clark, former head cheerleader and current pharmaceutical sales representative, based on her LinkedIn profile that I'd been forced to review when she tagged me in 17 reunion-related Facebook posts. "I can't believe you actually came." "Hey, Madison." I stood up to accept her enthusiastic hug, which lasted precisely long enough for her to catalog my thrift store outfit and lack of visible jewelry. "You look exactly the same," she said with the kind of smile that wasn't quite a compliment. "Still shopping at Goodwill, I see." "Something like that." "Well, at least you're here. I wasn't sure you'd show up after." She trailed off meaningfully, glancing around to see if anyone was listening. "After what?" "Oh, the whole situation with your startup company or whatever it was. I heard it didn't work out." "The situation?" "Right. 4 years ago, when my former classmates were still active on social media, they'd witnessed what appeared to be the spectacular failure of my first attempt at entrepreneurship. A small tech company that had burned through investors' money and shut down after 18 months, leaving me apparently broke and living back home with my parents. What they didn't know was that the failure had been entirely strategic. "These things happen," I said with a shrug. "Oh, absolutely. And there's no shame in trying, right? I always tell my clients that failure is just a stepping stone to success." She patted my arm condescendingly. "I'm sure you'll figure something out eventually." "I'm sure I will. Have you seen the awards display yet? We're doing superlatives tonight. Most successful, traveled farthest, most kids, that sort of thing. It should be fun." Before I could respond, she'd fluttered away to greet someone whose designer dress and obvious Botox treatments suggested more promising networking opportunities. I returned to my corner table and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my assistant, 2 from my publicist and 1 from Forbes magazine. I'd been expecting the Forbes call for weeks, but the timing was going to be interesting. Jordan fucking Peterson. The voice belonged to Kyle Morrison, former star quarterback and current middle manager at his father's insurance company. He approached my table with the kind of aggressive friendliness that suggested he'd already had several drinks. "Good to see you. Man, I heard about your company going under. That sucks, dude. But hey, at least you went for it, right? Most people don't have the balls to even try starting a business." "True. You working anywhere now? Because I might know some people who are hiring." "Nothing fancy but steady paycheck, decent benefits. My dad's always looking for good people." "Thanks, I'll keep that in mind." "Seriously though, what are you doing for work these days?" This was the question I'd been dreading all evening. The truth was complicated and most people wouldn't believe it anyway. "Consulting," I said, which was technically accurate. "Consulting on what?" "Business strategy, technology implementation, that sort of thing." Cool. "Freelance stuff." "Something like that." Kyle nodded with the kind of understanding that suggested he thought consulting was code for unemployed but too proud to admit it. "Well, let me know if you want an introduction to some real opportunities. There's good money in insurance if you're willing to put in the work." After he wandered away, I considered leaving early. The reunion was exactly as awkward and depressing as I'd anticipated, and I had an early morning meeting with my board of directors tomorrow to discuss the quarterly earnings report. But then the DJ's music faded and someone tapped on the microphone at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our favorite part of the evening, the Superlative Awards." Our former student body president, now an ambitious local politician, had appointed himself master of ceremonies. He stood at the front of the room with a stack of certificates and what he probably thought was a charismatic smile. "We surveyed everyone who RSVP'd to the reunion and asked you to vote on various categories. Some of these might surprise you." Polite applause from the crowd. "Let's start with most successful." This one was pretty unanimous. "Congratulations to Jennifer Walsh for making partner at Crawford, Stevens and Associates." Jennifer walked to the front of the room to accept her certificate while people applauded genuinely. She deserved the recognition. Law firm partner by 28 was legitimately impressive. Next up, traveled farthest to be here. That honor goes to Michael Chin, who flew in from Tokyo where he's working for Goldman Sachs. More applause. Michael had always been smart, and his international banking career was exactly the kind of success story that impressed at high school reunions. The awards continued through various categories. Biggest family, best dressed, least changed, most changed. I half listened while checking my phone again. 4 missed calls now from Forbes. They were probably wondering why I hadn't called back yet. Now this next category is a little different, the MC continued, his tone shifting to something that sounded almost apologetic. We thought it would be fun to include some, let's call them honorable mention categories. A few people in the crowd chuckled nervously. These are all in good fun, of course. Just a way to acknowledge that not everyone's path after high school has been conventional. I looked up from my phone, suddenly paying attention. So, in the spirit of good humor, our final award goes to the person voted least successful by their former classmates. The room had gone quiet. This wasn't the kind of award anyone wanted to win, especially not in front of 300 people. And the least successful goes to... He opened the envelope with theatrical flair. Jordan Peterson. The applause that followed was different from the earlier awards. Not celebratory, but the kind of awkward, mocking clapping that happens when people are uncomfortable but feel obligated to participate in someone else's humiliation. I sat frozen in my chair for a moment, processing what had just happened. My former classmates had literally voted me the least successful person in our graduating class. The kid who'd tried to start a company and failed spectacularly. The one who was apparently still doing consulting work and shopping at Goodwill. Jordan Peterson, come on up here, the MC called out, holding up a certificate. The crowd was looking at me now, some with pity, others with barely concealed amusement. This was the kind of moment that would define how people remembered me for the next 10 years. I stood up and walked toward the stage, my footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet ballroom. That's when my phone rang. Not buzzed. Rang. Loudly enough that people in the front rows could hear it over the sound system. I looked at the caller ID. Forbes magazine. Sorry, I said to the MC who was still holding my certificate. I should probably take this. Really? Right now? It's important. I answered the phone in front of 300 people. Jordan Peterson speaking. Mr. Peterson, this is Catherine Williams from Forbes magazine. I apologize for calling so late on a Saturday, but we've just received final approval from our editorial board. Her voice was crisp and professional, and just loud enough that the people in the front rows could hear fragments of the conversation. Final approval for what? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Your cover story for next month's issue. The youngest billionaire of the year. How Jordan Peterson built a tech empire while everyone thought he'd failed. The room had gone completely silent now. Even the DJ had stopped the background music. I see, I said calmly. And the publication date? Next Monday. We'll need you in New York Tuesday morning for the photo shoot, and Wednesday afternoon for the television interviews. CNN, CNBC, and Bloomberg have all requested segments. That works for my schedule. Excellent. The story focuses on how you used your first company's apparent failure as cover while building neural flow systems into a $12 billion artificial intelligence empire. Our readers are fascinated by stealth entrepreneurs who operate below the radar. $12 billion. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. The research team was particularly impressed by your strategy of maintaining a low profile while acquiring 17 AI companies over the past 4 years. Brilliant misdirection. I could feel 300 pairs of eyes staring at me. The MC was still standing beside me, holding my least successful certificate, but his expression had changed from condescending amusement to confused shock. Forbes estimates your personal net worth at approximately $3.2 billion, making you the youngest self-made billionaire in the technology sector. Is that figure accurate? It's in the right neighborhood. And you achieved this while everyone believed your first startup had failed? That was the point. Public failure creates privacy. Privacy creates opportunity. Genius strategy. We'll see you in New York on Tuesday. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket. The ballroom remained completely silent. The MC was the first to recover. Did someone just say billionaire? $12 billion company, I corrected. Personal net worth is only about $3 billion. Only about $3 billion, he repeated numbly. Plus or minus a few $100 million depending on market conditions. Someone in the crowd made a sound that might have been a gasp or a laugh. I couldn't tell which. Your first company, Jennifer Walsh called out from her table near the front. DataSync Solutions. That failed 4 years ago. DataSync was never meant to succeed, I explained. It was a cover story. While everyone thought I was a failed entrepreneur living with my parents, I was quietly building neural flow systems. Neural flow. Michael Chin had gone pale. The AI company that Goldman Sachs has been trying to acquire? Among others. We've had offers from Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and about 20 other companies over the past 2 years. But you turned them down? I'm not interested in being acquired. I'm interested in building something that changes how the world works. Kyle Morrison was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You've been pretending to be unsuccessful for 4 years? I've been maintaining a low profile while building one of the fastest-growing technology companies in history. There's a difference. But why the secrecy? Because once people know you're successful, everything changes. Every conversation becomes about money. Every relationship gets colored by assumptions about wealth. Every business decision gets scrutinized by competitors and regulators. I gestured toward the crowd. Tonight, for example. How did you all treat me when you thought I was unsuccessful? Uncomfortable silence. You offered me job opportunities. You gave me business advice. You spoke to me like I was a normal person you'd known in high school. That's valuable feedback about market conditions, consumer behavior, and industry trends. You were using us for market research? Madison's voice carried a note of outrage. I was maintaining authentic relationships while gathering information about how different industries are adapting to technological change. Your insights about pharmaceutical sales automation have been particularly useful. Why insights? Your complaints about outdated CRM systems and inefficient client management tools. NeuralFlow's healthcare division has incorporated several features based on problems you've described over the past few years. She stared at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been pride. So when you said you were doing consulting work, Kyle began. I consult for Fortune 500 companies on AI integration and digital transformation. My hourly rate is $15,000. $15,000 per hour? Plus expenses. Though most of my work now is focused on NeuralFlow's strategic development. The MC was still holding my certificate. What do I do with this? Keep it, I said with a smile. It's technically accurate. I am the least successful person at this reunion. How is that possible? Because success isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in impact. And I haven't begun to achieve the impact I'm working toward. I walked back toward my table, but the crowd was standing now, everyone trying to get closer, voices overlapping with questions and congratulations and requests for business cards. How did you do it? When did you start the company? Can you get me a job? Do you remember when we were lab partners in chemistry? I held up my hand for quiet. I'm happy to answer questions, but let me explain something first. The room settled. 4 years ago when DataSync failed, most of you either ignored me completely or treated me with pity. Tonight you voted me least successful. In both cases, your behavior was perfectly reasonable based on the information you had. Nods from the crowd. But now that you know I'm worth $3 billion, suddenly everyone wants to be my best friend. You're remembering positive interactions that probably never happened. You're retroactively claiming credit for supporting my success. More uncomfortable silence. That's exactly why I maintain the deception. Money changes how people relate to you and not usually for the better. Jennifer raised her hand. So what's the point of having money if you can't enjoy it? Who says I'm not enjoying it? I love my work. I love building things that matter. I love solving problems that improve people's lives. The money is just a scorecard that tells me whether my solutions are actually valuable. But don't you want the recognition? The status? I want the impact. Recognition and status are distractions from the work.
Michael stepped forward. The work being what exactly? Artificial intelligence that actually serves human needs instead of just automating human jobs. Healthcare AI that helps doctors make better diagnoses. Educational AI that personalizes learning for individual students. Financial AI that helps people make better decisions about money instead of just generating more profits for banks. And you built all this while pretending to be unsuccessful? I built all this while focusing entirely on the work instead of managing public perception. The pretense was just a side effect of staying focused. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed my assistant. Jordan, I've been trying to reach you. The Wall Street Journal wants to follow up on the Forbes story, and TechCrunch is requesting an exclusive about your acquisition strategy. Schedule everything for next week. I'm at my high school reunion. Your high school reunion? The one where you were expecting people to treat you like a failure. I looked around the ballroom, where 300 former classmates were staring at me with expressions ranging from awe to confusion to barely concealed resentment. Mission accomplished, I told her, and ended the call. The MC was still processing everything. So you're really worth $3 billion? According to Forbes, yes. And you've been building this company for 4 years without anyone knowing? 17 key employees knew. My board of directors knew. Various investors and partners knew. But yes, I've kept a very low public profile. Why reveal it now? Because Neuralflow is about to go public. Monday morning, we're filing for an IPO that will make the company's value visible to everyone. After that, maintaining anonymity becomes impossible. So this is your last night of being able to pretend to be normal? This is my last night of being able to have authentic interactions with people who knew me before I was wealthy. I looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of people I'd grown up with but barely kept in touch with over the past decade. For what it's worth, I said, this evening has been exactly what I expected it would be. You treated me the way people treat someone they perceive as unsuccessful, and now you're treating me the way people treat someone they perceive as wealthy. Both behaviors are predictable and rational. And depressing? Jennifer suggested. And informative. Understanding human behavior at this level is crucial for building AI systems that actually work in the real world. So we were all just data points in your research? You were people I used to know, behaving exactly the way people behave. The research value was a bonus. Kyle stepped forward. I owe you an apology. For what? For offering you a job at my dad's insurance company. That must have been. That was you being a decent human being to someone you thought needed help. Why would you apologize for that? Because it was condescending. It was kind. There's a difference. Madison raised her hand tentatively. When I talked about your clothes and shopping at Goodwill, you were making social assessments based on visible status markers. Perfectly normal behavior. But it was mean. It was honest. I do shop at Goodwill. These clothes did cost $12 total. Your observations were accurate. But you could afford anything. I could afford anything, but I don't need anything. Expensive clothes wouldn't make me better at building AI systems. The conversation continued for another hour, with questions about my company, my strategy, and my plans for the future. People wanted to know about my daily routine, my investment philosophy, and whether I remembered various shared experiences from high school. Gradually, the crowd began to disperse. Some people seemed genuinely interested in reconnecting as adults, others were clearly calculating potential business opportunities, and a few appeared to be processing the fundamental reorganization of their assumptions about success and failure. As the evening wound down, I found myself back at my corner table with the 3 people who had made genuine effort to stay in touch over the years: Sarah Martinez, who taught elementary school, Tom Wilson, who managed a nonprofit, and Lisa Kim, who worked as a nurse practitioner. So what happens now? Sarah asked. After the IPO, after the Forbes cover, after everyone knows? Now I get back to work. We have AI systems to build, problems to solve, and hopefully some positive impact to make on the world. But your life will be completely different. My work will be exactly the same. Everything else will be more complicated. Tom was studying the least successful certificate that the MC had left on my table. Are you going to keep this? Absolutely. It's a reminder that success looks different depending on your perspective and timeline. And that public perception doesn't always match reality. And that public perception is usually irrelevant to the work that actually matters. Lisa smiled. You know what's funny? You're still exactly the same person you were in high school. How so? Completely focused on whatever project you're working on, totally oblivious to social dynamics, and convinced that you can solve any problem if you think about it long enough. That's probably accurate. The only difference is that now your projects are worth billions of dollars. The only difference is that now I have the resources to work on problems that actually matter. As we prepared to leave, Sarah asked one final question. Do you think it was worth it? The secrecy, the deception, letting people think badly of you? I looked around the ballroom one last time, at the decorations and the awards display and the remnants of an evening that had turned out very differently than anyone had expected. Ask me in 10 years, I said. When we see whether neural flow actually manages to build AI that helps humanity instead of just replacing it. And if it doesn't work out? Then I'll have been the least successful person at this reunion after all. As I drove home that night in my 15-year-old Toyota, I thought about the look on my classmates' faces when they'd realized their assumptions about me had been completely wrong. Tomorrow, the Forbes article would go live and my anonymity would disappear forever. By Monday morning, NeuralFlow's IPO would make me one of the most visible entrepreneurs in the technology industry. But tonight I was still just Jordan, the high school graduate who'd surprised everyone by turning out differently than they'd expected. The least successful person in my class who'd quietly built something extraordinary while everyone thought he was failing. The billionaire who'd won an award for being unsuccessful and meant to keep it as a reminder that success is always more complicated than it looks from the outside.